Quick. Hello and welcome everybody to the Friday Data Lecture Series. First and foremost, I want to thank our speakers committee. Without their support, we would not be able to bring in such wonderful speakers. Today we have Emma Vidal. Emma was born in Marseille, France in 1992. Vidal graduated from the Central St. Martin's College of Art and Design in London in 2014 and has exhibited nationally and internationally. She also holds an art market master's degree from the INSEAD Business School in Paris. Until 2020, she had been based in St. Louis, Missouri, where she discovered her love of ceramics at the Intersect Art Center. She currently lives and works in Wilmington, Delaware. In 2018, she was included in the Volta Art Basel in Switzerland and the D Dessin Drawing Art Fair in Paris in France. Since 2012, Vidal has been exhibiting her work in prestigious institutions, including the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, the Plymouth Art Center, the Intersect Art Center here in St. Louis, the Wellcome Collection Museum in London, the Royal West of England Academy Bristol, the Jerwood Space in London. Solo exhibitions include the Oniro Gallery in Paris, Hoffman Lachance Contemporary in St. Louis, and Espace 12 in Marseille. Her ceramic and mixed media sculpture, as well as her monochromic large charcoal pieces, are included in private collections worldwide. Without further ado, if you could give a warm welcome to Emma Vidal.
Hi. Thank you so much, Emily. So thank you so much for having me, and that's a pleasure to be here today. I'm going to start by sharing my screen because I have a little presentation. Oh, what did I just do? Up. Perfect. So yes, can everyone hear me correctly? Yes, perfect. So my name is Emma Vidal. I'm a fine artist and an illustrator. So I'm going to tell you a bit more about where I'm from. And I think because I'm also a teacher at the same time, I would love to give you any tips that comes to my mind. And if of course you have any questions, I'd be very happy to answer all your questions at the end of the lecture. So don't hesitate to write it in the chat if you want to. So I'm originally from Marseille. Marseille is a city on the south of France by the Mediterranean Sea. So here I put for you lovely pictures of Marseille and the sea with this cold weather. It's kind of what it feels like to, I wish I'd be home right now. So yeah, Marseille is a beautiful town. I grew up there until I was 18, I think, when I finished high school. And then after this, I went to Paris, where I did a foundation year. So a foundation year, it's a foundation art class just before university, and they prepare you for any competition in order to enter university. And so the foundation I did was called Atelier de Sèvres, and Atelier de Sèvres in particular is one which is known and to be very strict, and they are known to be a very dramatic teacher who will torn your drawing apart if the composition is wrong. And if so, this is really my foundation year was the first year where I really learned about like not sleeping too much and working all night long, but working very hard. And it was my first introduction to what it was to work in series and to really push myself. So it was a very intense year, and this year's prepared me to enter at Central St. Martin's. So Central St. Martin's is an amazing school which is in London in the UK. It was my first choice of school, and I was so glad I got accepted. The first year I arrived at St. Martin was in 2011, and it was the first year that we're in this beautiful new building. This building was really incredible because, as you can see on the picture of the right, this is actually some classrooms which are completely glass windows, and they're gathered from fashion student, graphic design, theater, architecture, and it's all this massive art school where there is this buzzing energy of artists and young creative who really want to be there because it's a highly competitive school. So unfortunately, I don't feel like I managed to go too much into different departments and really enjoy this collective energy, but it's something you could really felt in the building. Um, these are a couple of pictures of my studio. So during the 3 year of BFA that I did in San Martin, you are given a studio space. So it's a bit different to how it works in the US, where you are more like during your bachelor degree, it's a lot of classes. And then maybe it's more in your master's that you have like more like a studio classes or independent studying. In the UK and in Central San Martin, I was independent completely from the first day with very, very little teaching. Maybe I was seeing a tutor once every 3 weeks just to redirect my practice, but it was very independent teaching. To me, it's really what fitted me because it's what I wanted to do, and I've always been very mature in my work and very independent. So it was kind of a blessing that it wasn't too structural. For other of my peers, it was much more complicated because we were super young. We were 18, 19. So it's a lot of freedom given to very young people. And so, yeah, I was surrounded by very motivated people. And this is something, my first little advice I will give you is to always surround you by highly creative people that you admire. And in order to grow with them and to really help each other in your successes. And this is something I did from the get-go. Central San Martin was open until like 11 p.m. at night. And I was staying until 11 p.m. every single night with a couple of friends. It was a lot of fun, a lot of dancing in the studio, but a lot of hard work too. So this is a little bit how my studio look even until now. It's always very chaotic with a lot of things happening at the same time. I love to work on multiple projects and to bounce between ideas. Yes, so this is not my work. This is probably you recognize it. It's an artist called Henri Darger, which has been a great inspiration to my work since I started. Henri Darger is known for this tale that he created about this this young girl who were living in this imaginary world, and he drew these little girls for like 10 years of his life, creating between like watercolors and collages. And I really like including narratives inside fine art, and it's all books, and you can have the whole tale and the whole stories of these young girls. In this story, the children are always the heroes and the mean people are the adults. And I really like these references. Two other artists that are pretty important in my work as a big inspiration is a German artist called Jonas Burgert on the left, who is known from this highly vibrant color, very fantastical creatures. There is often like clowns, zebras. There is a lot of this kind of tribe of people, sometimes infants, always super colorful and with these explosions of colors, which remind like the the color days in India where they splash pigments everywhere. So it's and these are monumental canvas. Like also one thing, I'm very bad at inches, so I'm doing everything in meters, but just some of his work has like twice the size of his walls. So it's like massive work, and you arrive in this composition, and it's really like really surrounding you from everywhere, and it's an amazing experience to see his work in person. Another artist that is really important in terms of reference is Charles Avery, who is the artist on the left. Charles Avery is a Scottish artist, Scottish or English, I think Scottish, who created this imaginary world of an island where there is this, invented a whole population living on an island and inventing creatures Invented like a flora as well. And everything is described in his work. So he's doing a lot of sculptural work. And this is, for example, a creature that would be living in this imaginary island. He's also known for watercolors, for paintings. And all his work is kind of a very weird play between reality and fiction. And even when you hear him talk about his work, he always plays on the notion of as if this island was a real place, and is actually just like bringing for us to see like some weird animals that he found on his trips. And so it's very interesting. I think it was during this exhibition as well, he had a couple of watercolor drawings, which were drawings of exhibition in this island of work from our contemporary artwork from our work. So there were always this back and forth between what is fiction, what is reality, which I find very, very fascinating and contribute as well to the narrative. So yeah, this is one of my very first drawing in the series of work I did. So until my second year, I've been looking a lot for my style, I would say, while being always very interested in childhood in general. So I first started by drawing a lot of people from my family. I've always been interested by the idea that children are at the same time very innocent and very like cute and these little angels, but there is a very evil and dark and feral side as well to childhood that I find fascinating, like very raw humanity. And maybe like when there is always this notion of like, are we born good or evil? And this is something that has really always intrigued me. So from the very start, I've always been drawn by this weird, by this notion of like, and you see also by the art I presented just before, I'm really drawn to artists that are a bit disturbing in some way, and a bit this darkness to it that I find very interesting. So this work was the first work of the very first character of this tribe that I call the Lost Boys. This is a work that is pretty special to me because during my second year at university, I entered a competition with this work called the Jarrow Drawing Prize. And the Jarrow Drawing Prize is an international drawing prize. I applied to it just, I was sure I wouldn't get it, but I applied to it because I was very, very strong-willed and felt like it's, if I didn't start applying to things, I will never do. So from the moment, and actually this work was selected in the prize in 2012, I want to say. So this was, of course, like a big validation for me of like, you are on the right track and this is the style of work you should keep on going. So it's all charcoal based on the paper I use is watercolor paper. So watercolor paper is very velvety and has a very nice texture to it, more texture than what normal drawing paper has. And this velvety paper really allows me to play with and have very dark blacks. So this is something I experimented with a lot as well, finding the right paper, the right charcoal. And then a whole series started. So as I was telling you, like once you have an idea that you like, and this is some advice that I got from this very first year of foundation that they push us to work in series, is any ideas that you have, if you do only one of them, it's not really meaningful. In order to really, really make your idea important and really understand the concept behind it, you have to work in series and in multiples. So this was different elements of other characters that I found that I wanted to create and try to find, to really shed light on different individuals. As you can see, they are very mysterious. Most of them are hiding their face. And then I included like a lot of skulls from animal, jewelries. There is this very like shamanic aspect to it. So this was from the Jarrow Prize I was telling you about. So they were a very big exhibition, and this was the first big exhibition that my work was part of. And then the work started to get more dense, more crowded with So always with this tribe of children, but imagining what would happen if they were kind of left in this post-apocalyptic world and they were left alone to create a new order and a new civilization. So all this work are pretty big. They're about like I think I wrote down. They're about 80-inch high. So they're really like massive charcoal drawings. Scale is always something that I've been drawn to, I think because of the medium as well. Charcoal is such a tactile medium that it's really nice to use your hands as your tools. And because you use your hands, it's like making the scale bigger, if that makes sense. Then I work on smaller scales, but then I will use like smaller tools for it. So I feel like the scales really allow me to work with my body more than, and really work with the charcoal at its fullest. Here's another work. This one is even bigger than the last one I showed you. And this is also like bringing back all this interest into like more like theatrical stages, playing with different scale and increasing this kind of fantastical aspect to the scene. It's also the first drawing where I started to include like some patterns. So you can see on the giant at the back, there is some skins drawing on his skin, which reminds a little bit like the tribes tattooing. So this is something that was first introduced here in my work, and then I brought a lot on all this on the one that followed after. This is also the work. So all these works were done during the end of my second year and third year of BFA. So this is again talking to you about working in series. I worked on these two works in parallel. They're also 80-inch high, so very big, my scale, my size high. And it's really creating series and always thinking about what we go next together to help me give more like opening more windows into this world I was creating. The one on the left was really much, it often starts with an idea, and the one on the left was really much inspired by the idea of the Virgin Mary holding the Christ. So of course this is like an exaggerated version of it, but religion and beliefs in general, like myth, has always been a big influence as well in my work. Then after I got very interested in sculpture. So these are two artists that at the time were my main reference. So on the left you have Anthony Gormley, and on the right you have David Mash, which are two British artists who work with the accumulation of elements. So in order to recreate the form. So Anthony Gormley here, it's often very conceptual form, and David March is more, I think in this particular sculpture with the tiger, he was using, this fence material with a spike. So this is actually what it's made of. That's why all the spike are coming off. So I was really interested in how by adding a lot of material together, you lose the sense of what the material is in order to recreate a new thing and lose its first meaning. So this is one of the first sculpture I made during my last year of BFA, which is called Sky Burial. And this is made of like, I don't remember how many, but like thousands and thousands and thousands of push pins. It's a pretty big sculpture on its own, and it was based on this myth that, I don't remember which tribe, I think many tribes have this, that the idea that you bring back like you put the dead on the top of a mountain and like birds eat them and it's going back to the sky. And it's all this belief that everything is circular, and what's come from the sky come back on earth, and so on and so on. So with this, I always loved the color gold in general because of this religious symbology behind it and all the belief that it got. And then using the push pins, it's really got also this spiky feel to it that is at the same time very attractive and very, very repulsive at the same time, and remind kind of a sacrifice idea too. Is it the word? Well, I forgot what I wanted to say. So it was very inspired also by all the African belief sculptures. So here are two examples of them. They're called, it's Nondi, I think, which are made in order to protect families and tribes. So it was also made in all this idea of like creating new beliefs out of this world I was creating, and imagining if this tribe of children, the Lost Boy tribe, were recreating a new civilization, what could be their own beliefs. So here are other sculpture also made of easy found objects. So this is made of charcoal, of pins, and of clothes pegs. So again, this is like bringing them back together to put them in a complete new context and to they really lose their initial purposes. This is another sculpture. So this was made during the residency, my first residency in St. Louis, where I didn't have a car. And I learned that in St. Louis, you need to have a car. So I kind of used anything I could find in the residency because I couldn't drive to go get material. And I found these beans and I found some tons of this toothpicks type. And I made these big sculptures, which look like a hedgehog, all made of these colored beans and colored toothpicks. So again, this idea of creating something with easily found material. This one is a bit more complex. It's made of fur, of jewelry, of different metals. But again, this idea of veneration, a little like a fetish sculpture. This one was made of mylar. So mylar is this, it's a plastic element and it's all folded in order to create these different origami shapes. This is again like pushing the idea of what I could do with this different, with this push pin that was fascinating me so much. And this is actually using the front and the back of the push pins to try to recreate patterns. So this one is really interesting to see when there is actual light on it, because you can, it's even more obvious. And it was also going back to this idea of taking something from 2D and bringing back to 3D and having this back and forth between the two languages. So this was my very first artist residency. This is how I fall in love with St. Louis. I hope you're all familiar with Polar Space. So Polar Space is a residency based in Florissant. And this on the right, you have the first, you have my little studio space in Polar Space. So again, Polar Space is in, it's kind of far from anything if you don't have a car. So I was just like really staying in the residency. I stayed there for 3 months and was just making work obsessively for 3 months. And at this residency, I got also the chance to add my first solo exhibition at the Museum Blue, which was a museum created by Michael Billy and Gina, I can't remember her last name. So yes, it was really a great opportunity. And this is something also, I don't know where you're at in your degree, but something to plan ahead. Like a lot of this residency are accepting, have precise deadlines for acceptance. And this is something, for example, I planned ahead of time. I didn't wait to be graduated to look for a residency because it's most of the time where it's much harder. So I applied to this residency a year in advance, hoping I will get it. But it's also something to try to think a bit in advance, because after finishing university, when you're studying the arts, you kind of feel like, okay, what do I do next? It's really up to you to be super proactive in order to find a job or to find ways to keep on going with your art. So getting into art residency where you are really well taken care of and have a space for an extended period of time in order to work is really, really amazing. So if you don't know this residency yet, I will really recommend you to have a look at it. And if you can apply to it, go for it, because it's really amazing. After this residency, I went back to London and I got a little shared studio space. And I worked a lot because I was preparing for different shows. These are a couple shows that followed the couple 3 months after my residency in Pole Art Space. So one was a solo show in Paris and one in London. So I got very lucky in the sense that very quickly I contacted myself galleries I was interested in, but also I got some people contacted me and saying they were interested in my work. So it's something that I'm aware that I got very lucky about, but it's true like for example, the Gallery Onero on the left is with the solo show. It's, I believe I contacted her, and it's something that I encourage you to do because you never know what can come out of it. It happened that in her case, I think an artist bailed on her or something like, or pushed or postponed her show. So she had kind of a 2 months gap, and she was like, oh, I like her work. Let's try to give it a chance. So it's really a matter of like trying to sell yourself well and just contacting people, and don't be scared of people telling you no, because you never know what can come out of it. This, I just put it because it's one of the work that was kind of a turning point in my career. So it's again one of this massive, large charcoal piece. And it's, I think, one of the first character which was like a profile, and that was, it was a really important work for me. So that's why I included it. Then I arrived at Intersect. So Intersect is again a really, really great space in St. Louis. That allows, so on the last floor of the building, there is only artist studios. So I think there is about, I want to say 15 different individual space with each one belong to an artist. And then on the first floor, you have a wood workshop, a ceramic workshop, and everything you would dream of. So at Intersect, it's, so this was my studio at Intersect. Ceramic is always something that has fascinated me, but I never had really the means to do it because you need a kiln, you need space. And it's something that I didn't understood how it works too. So it was a big mystery, but something that was fascinating me. And it's really when arriving at Intersect that I started to work more in ceramic and making my sculptures in ceramic really like remove the boundary for me, which was when I was making sculpture with mixed media, you have a lot of, you're kind of forced to work with the mixed media you're working with in terms of scales. Whereas in ceramic, I could make anything I wanted to without being like constrained by the boundary of the object itself. So I felt it was like the most amazing medium, and I'm still completely obsessed with this medium. That now it's completely overtaking my whole practice and studio. And again, ceramic allow you to work with metal glaze and to really have this rich gold colors. So these are like other elements, one large sculpture and one smaller on the right. This is a smaller scale pieces, which is actually made with the actual gold, 22 gold carat. So I still do charcoal work. So this is me working in my sculpture, in my studio. But it's true that it's, at the moment, I'm really, really drawn to ceramic. And then I go back and forth because it's really two different type of work and practice. And it's nice sometimes to rest your brain and just draw, or to switch and to work differently. So yes, this is another picture, and just to show you like all the little detail into it. So I love to include as many detail as possible. And also bringing a lot of different elements. So I was telling you about the tribe statue. So this is something that I've been using a lot of Baroque pattern in order to do this. And it's a bit the idea of this tribe of children that I call the Lost Boys. I kind of gathering objects and elements from a lot of different era and period, and just like bringing them all together in order to try to create a new form of beliefs and a new civilization. I also include a lot of my sculpture in my drawing. So I don't know if you can see, can you see my mouth if I move it on the screen? Yeah. So here is one of my sculpture. I also included one here. So I really like this back and forth about like between exhibiting and having the physical sculpture and then including them in the work. So you can feel the reference between this artist I was telling you at the beginning, Chalavery, who created similar analogies. So it's something that I've been really interested into as well. This is something that is much more new and not really shared about yet, but I thought that you might like it. So this is much more object design oriented. And I've been working and thinking a lot about this different symbol, and more precisely the Ouroboros symbol, which is an Egyptian symbol of a snake eating his own tail, and the idea of like circle of life. And from this, I came out with different mirror design. So this is just like one development test I've been working on to see how I can grow my work maybe more like toward object design as well. But it's still at a very early process stage. Let's see. I don't know do we still have time for me to show a video, Emily? Yeah. So I'm going to show you a quick video that was made it was just before the start of the pandemic last year. So I think like this, you can see a little bit what my studio and practice look like. Does it work? Yeah. Can you hear?
So my name is Emma Vidal. I'm a French artist. I grew up in the south of France in a city called Marseille. And I came here in St. Louis about like 2.5, 3 years ago. My work is mostly ceramic sculptures and drawings. I do a lot of chocolate drawings and recently I started to develop it.
Yes.
Let's try it.
Can you hear it?
Yeah, it's just a little faint.
Should I remove the earphones? Would it help?
Yeah, try that. It was a lot louder when you tested it out earlier.
Or painting practice as well. Working a lot with symbols. So this body of work that I'm currently working on is all based on this ancient Egyptian symbol of the Ouroboros, which is this symbol of the circle of life, this idea of like a snake eating his own tail. It's usually like a circular symbol. My work really originated from this tribe of children that I call the Lost Boys. So it's a body of work that I started about 7-8 years ago now. I can show you like over there's the painting which is still in progress, but it's this idea of like having my characters and they're like gathering a lot of artifacts that look very of different civilization and trying to create a new order out of it. I'm very interested with all the symbolism, religion, why human being needs to have something bigger than them. So, and what I work with my ceramic sculptures is trying really to develop more what could, how their own divinities could look like. So imagining like their own fetish sculpture. So here you have one. And it's really like trying to represent different form. I'm very interested in all these Baroque patterns as well that are pretty recurrent in my practice. I get inspiration from, various different sources. And in terms of patterns, I think it's really like a research about how tribes like to have tattoos themselves to like belong to a certain tribe or stuff like this. So it's a recurrent idea after I really like the aesthetic and the more like symbol form that Baroque pattern has. So it's kind of trying to incorporate in the bodies and in the of each characters. I really like to move my studio around depending on what I'm working on. So far, I've been working a lot on sculpture. So these two have been really important to me. And they're again like using this gold glaze, more like this one is more like a bronze metallic one. I have a couple here. So all of this, I work in here. On this desk, I usually work on my drawing, which is really like this architect cable that you can totally raise. So for large formats, it's really good. And yeah, I mostly work from here. My sculpture slowly like took over my old studio, I think. So now I'm trying to push a little bit the walls for here to, for example, have some space to work more on a painting. When I'm working on really big work or need to use like special equipment, I will often use here. For example, this is a clay extruder is what I use to make all the snake's body, because it can just like, you put the clay here and it will like extrude it in a tube form directly. Yeah, this is, here there is a couple of glaze stations. I don't really use these glazes, but it's here. I can show you the kiln room because this is my favorite room in here. The kiln room is here. So this is where all the firing are happening. I recently acquired this little baby, which is all mine. And so I need to fix it a little bit first, but I'm pretty excited to have my own kiln. One that I can show you that I'm pretty excited about. So usually I work in very big scale. And this was actually started really as a test. And I don't know, I really felt I could develop it more. So I worked more on all the tiny details. And yeah, so far I really like the result, and I'm hoping to have it like entirely gold with this luster gold in pure gold. So for tools, I have a couple of them here. I just got this new, which is my little precious angel, because it's a bit costly. And after I kind of started to do all these patterns on my sculpture, which are now a little bit like a signature that all of them have, even the big one. So again, with this idea I was telling you of the having like the different tribe symbol tattooed on them. And this is all done with a toothpick. What I usually do is I will outline its shape. So this is taking a little bit, and after it's all about like filling, like doing all this little tattooing that I do. What I realized in the US is a lot of the taste is inspired by European classics. So there's actually like a lot of similarities, but it's very hard to say. But I think in art there is some different tastes. Like I remember like thinking a lot like how, for example, if you go in different parts of the US, you will have very different artists. For example, Los Angeles artists are very, of course, very colorful, very, it's an art which is very happy in general. If you go more toward the East Coast, it's much more European. It's much darker. For example, I'm not sure my charcoal drawing will do really well in California and stuff. I think it's always good to follow what you want to say in general. I really believe that trying to be trendy doesn't work. And it's something that is pretty recurrent with a student I teach. It's if you try to be trendy, you like the train is already gone, and there's gonna be a next trend, and there's always something next that you can never catch, and you will end up losing yourself. So I think it's much better to try to really, really connect with what motivates you and really animates you, and really go, but 120% just into it and try to make it happen and move everything around you to really make it heard by people and seen by people. I think is much more valuable. And it might take a little bit longer, maybe, but it's, I think at the end, the result will be much more important and valuable than just like running against something that, isn't it?
I agree.
Does that make sense?
Yes,
Yeah.
it does.
There you go. Am I still sharing? I don't. No, we can.
You stop sharing.
Okay.
I could get you to put your headphones back in so we could hear you again. Yay, technology. All of its quirks. All right, so that was the last thing you had to share in terms of images, right?
It was, yes.
Okay. Yeah, we're gonna open it up to questions. If anybody has a question, they can either unmute and ask in person, or they can put it in the chat, and I will relay that to Emma. Yeah. Who has questions? I know Sarah had already typed trying to get clarification about, it was Charles Avery was the Scottish
Mhm.
artist you're talking about.
Correct, yes.
Okay, I did look it up. He is Scottish.
Scottish, perfect.
I'm kind of curious. You were here at an artist residency in St. Louis. How did you find St. Louis in your search? You said you were looking for, what was going to be your next step, sort of a year in advance before you graduated. Like, it just seems very strange to go from where you were at school to this, I mean, not little town in the Midwest, but certainly is not necessarily what I would imagine would be your first inclination, like New York or LA or something. How'd you find us?
So I was purposely looking in the area of St. Louis because my boyfriend, now husband, was started to work there. So after, we did 4 years long distance. So I was like, okay, I need to get closer. So even if it starts with residencies so I was just aiming the US in general.
Mhm.
I applied to a couple of residencies a bit everywhere in the US, and I think Polar Space reached out to me pretty quickly, and we connected very fast and became really good friends. And so I decided to go there. But it wasn't completely random.
I mean, that's also how I got to St. Louis. So
Yeah. And also after, like, something to keep in mind is that it's often easier as well to get into a smaller cities artist residency, or like in terms of competition or in terms of any opportunities. It might be a bit more easier than applying to a residency in New York, where you have like thousands of applicants as well who want to be there. And some, like when you first start, it's also easier as well to start with, because at the time Polar Space was only 1 year old as well. So they were also very young and very new, like I was, which was helpful.
well, that was the same story with Intersect too, because Intersect has only been in existence for 2 years now.
Yeah.
That space was sort of built from the ground up. As with like most art spaces in St. Louis, I feel like they start small and then they just kind of gradually grow. All right, guys, come on. Let's give Emma some questions.
Thank you.
Hi, Emma. I have a question. Sorry, my video's off, but I was curious if you could talk a little bit about how you come up with your references for your massive charcoal drawings, because they're so incredibly detailed and like you completely believe the setting and surrounding you create for us. But I was curious if you could talk about just kind of how you come up with those references.
Thank you so much, Marissa. For the references, I use a lot of Baroque patterns and images. So I have tons of Pinterest boards with tons of Flemish painting. And I try to get as many, as you saw, some composition, as you were saying, were very crowded. And usually I will do like Pinterest boards per paintings and just try gathering different elements that I found interesting and try to group my images this way. or otherwise a good Google search and print them. But I'm really, yeah, there's a lot of research that go into the work prior making it, but often it's mostly start with an idea of how the composition will look like. And it's after while I'm building it that I'm adding elements, and the small elements are more like building slowly as it goes. Not every element is planned beforehand. So for example, in one of the painting, there is like an open banana, and I just look for reference picture and find one I find interesting, and will use it to recreate it in my work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've got Natalie Baldion is trying to get confirmation of the first artist you shared. She says it sounds like it was Arid Archer.
It's Jera Richer. Is it Richer? Or I have a student. I don't know how you spell it.
I'm assuming Natalie's asking about the paintings that had all the little girls.
I know exactly which painting, but all of a sudden I have a big, like, I'm gonna look. Henri Darger. Here we go. Sorry about this. And also, I don't know if anyone has question about it, but I was actually, I didn't know if I wanted to include it or not in the presentation. It's about, so Emily was saying that I did a master's degree in business, and it's something that also has been pretty important in the work that I do right now. So I think as artists, we are all entrepreneurs, and that's why studying business was really important to me, because and if you don't study business, I think it's really important to get a strong interest in it if it's something you want to make as your career, because you need to be a good communicator, you need to to know a little bit of finance in order to, so there's a lot of points that could be very useful. There's tons of YouTube videos, of Skillshare video about finances for artists, marketing for artists, and entrepreneurship in general. So I think this was really helpful to me. And also in a sense of like creating your own opportunities when they don't come to you, which is always the case. So for example, in London, when I was in St. Martin, sorry, I don't have battery anymore.
Everybody bear with us.
I'm here. There's, in London, I created like 2 shows. One of them was in a distracted church that we managed. We wanted to rent at first with little money gathering from different artists. And then the people just like leave it to us in exchange of us just cleaning it up a little bit. So this is something that was super cool to experience at first, that to really like feel like you can create your own opportunity, invite people, and then make a show and an exhibition out of it, and then hope you get your first exhibition on your CV. And I find a lot of opportunities happen this way for me. Like I made a show as well in my mom's apartment in Marseille when I was there over summer, and we emptied the entire apartment like completely and put everything into the 2 bedrooms. And so we had this white background to do like kind of a sort of a gallery inside, and we made it like, so it's all about like finding ways to put your work out there and to make it seen. And after like trying to take professional-ish look picture, advertise it in your CV, on your website, on social media. And it's a lot of little things like this that I find useful with this entrepreneurship idea of the art world. And then after, while doing my master, I created an online gallery called Hatch with the goal of helping young emerging artists. So this is something we did for 2.5 years. We were representing 37 French artists. And the idea was really like to help them promote and finding projects and opportunities for them. So we were working with different companies who were interested in having like art on their wall. And so we were providing the artists, and they were paying us like a service of having recurring and changing collection on the wall. So this was pretty fun to make as well. And right now I recently started an illustration business, which is a scientific illustration business. So kind of different, but in line as well of this artistic idea of it. So I'm still predominantly working on my fine art practice, but it's something that I really appreciate as well, having on the side and being a bit multitasker. And I teach as well.
We've got a question from Jacob Marshall in the chat. What is the biggest difference between working here in St. Louis as opposed to working in a massive city like London?
The first thing that comes to my mind is price. So cost in terms of, and this was a huge thing for me, because having a studio in London versus having a studio in St. Louis is too, like, I don't think I could have stayed in London so long. Mm-hmm. So I got lucky in the sense that I had shows and I managed to sell work, but I didn't have a lot of like, I couldn't see, I was covering my months I was in, let's say, and the next month was a big interrogation point in London. Whereas in St. Louis, the housing market being what it is, it's much easier for artists to live and to have a very good life. In London, at one point I was doing, it wasn't bad because I really enjoyed it, but for 3 months I lived in my studio. So it was a lot of fun, but it's just because the cost of living was so high that I was like, between choosing one or the other, I prefer to, so it wasn't heated, it wasn't, but it was fun. So yeah, this is to me the biggest difference. And then after, in terms of exhibitions, it's true that in London there is a lot of exhibitions you can go to and get a lot of inspiration. I feel in St. Louis it's starting to, but it's not as present. But what I've been doing before this year, of course, but it was to try to travel a lot. So I have a friend in New York, and I was visiting them for like a week and trying to see a lot of work and get as much inspiration I could get maybe from London, but by traveling and going a bit everywhere.
I will say that one of the benefits of St. Louis, and you'll probably agree with this, is that the exhibitions that you do get to go to, you normally get to meet whoever the artist is.
That's very true. That's super strange.
It's very strange, right? You know,
it's very true. It's something that is odd, because it's artists you will never be able to talk to, like in any. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I'm very, very bad with name. This artist who did the portrait of Michelle Obama. What's her name?
Oh.
Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot too.
Cheryl?
Yes, yeah. So she was in St. Louis last year or 2 years ago. And she's 2 years ago. She's an artist, for example, that will be. Maybe you could approach her. I don't know, but it's someone, and she was just like generally talking to everyone at the opening and hugging people, taking pictures. And it's like, that's so cool. Like, you can just ask them anything you want. The lectures, all the lectures that the CAM do as well are super good. Mm-hmm. And of very high quality. They always have like amazing guests, and yeah, highly recommend it.
You gave us a little bit of advice. I want to ask, just because I've got my lecture class in the audience here. Mm-hmm. We've talked a lot about sort of that transition from going or being in academia to the real world. Do you have any other sage advice that you would give for sort of, I guess, maintaining motivation or developing a sort of sustainable creative practice that actually sort of extends beyond academia? I know there usually is that sense of shock and then possible burnout with, trying to pay bills and everything. We're always looking for more advice for these guys, because a lot of them are upcoming juniors and seniors, so they will be entering that world very soon.
I think, yeah, to start thinking about it as early as possible would be my recommendation, not to wait, because right now you're so into like your final, and maybe like the graduation moment, that it's maybe hard to see what you're going to do after. But I think it's a good idea to try to, from now, prepare it a little, try to look for opportunities, build like a very solid portfolio you can start to send out to people. Really not just to think as the graduation day like a finality on its own. Try to, it's one step and then you have to keep on going. And another thing I would say, to see your work as a job that you have to do, so blocking time for it. Like even now, for example, with the illustration that's taking me a lot of time, I still try to have like 3 full days of studio work. And this is just like set in stone. Same after, like when you will learn, like with being like professional creatives, like yeah, there is you're not spending all your time in your studio. So there is also this part of like administrative task, and doing your finances, or like answering to emails, or preparing your portfolio. It's something you have to update a lot and redo. So this is all like studio time on its own that is not really count. So I think really set time for your work, and then after, don't rely too much. I think we discussed with Emily yesterday, like about inspiration, that sometimes it's a bit hard. And I think for me in my work, I try not to, if I don't have inspiration, I will draw anyway. And I always try to do this, because I think because it's your work, if you depend on something external, it's, you just have to do your work. So if you're set like 2 hours of art studio time, just even if you're not inspired, you draw something. Like, this would be my advice. Just do it, and even if it's crap, the whole thing, you will take something out of it, I think, even if it's very little and not as good as if you were full of inspiration.
Even if it feels like work.
Exactly.
Excellent. Does anybody have any final questions before we let Emma continue on with her day? It looks like, I think we got a lot of thanks. We got people running to their next meetings. Well, I want to say thank you again, Emma, for joining us and for talking to us about your practice. It's really kind of wonderful to just see sort of how many different approaches you take. I always enjoy when someone is more of a polymath, and they have or gain inspiration from everything that they encounter. So I want to thank you for talking to us today. And then, yeah, if anybody in my group has any questions, we will be meeting immediately after this in our lecture meeting. And yeah, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and I will join you guys in there soon. But for right now, everybody give a last thank you to Emma. And I know there's a WAC meeting today. I got an email about it. So if you guys are attending that, I'll see you guys later in the chat. And yeah, thanks again, Emma. I hope everything is good.
Thank you. Thank you.
And yeah, I hope you get some good studio time in today.
Yes, I will.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. See you soon. Bye-bye.